Hello and welcome to Britain. Oh, that's certainly what it feels like today. I'm actually in Stellenbosch outside Cape Town, and it is so grey and so miserable, but weirdly it's really pretty. It's actually beautiful out here. Sort of autumn colours around, all the bare trees. It seems like the perfect environment for this, the new Range Rover Evoque. And there are some baboons in the road. Yep, you're not gonna get that in Britain. Alrighty, so this new Range Rover Evoque. This is the best-selling Range Rover in the world, and that's because it's the cheapest, obviously. But it's not actually that cheap if you look at the price list. Starts at over 740 grand and goes up to just under $1 million for the first edition. Yeah, R1 million for the baby Range Rover. So, what do you get for your money? Right now in South Africa, there are only 2 engines and 2 models available. P250, which is a 2-litre petrol, and the 180D, which is a 2-litre turbo diesel. I'm busy driving the petrol, and it is a lovely engine, very quiet. I mean, I don't know if you can hear it on camera because I actually can't hear it, and I'm in the car. It's mated to a 9-speed gearbox. Both engines actually have the same gearbox, and it's a good gearbox. There's nothing wrong with it, but out here cruising these country lanes, honestly, it might as well not even have a gearbox. It's really, really good. So that's fine. I'm happy with that. What I'm not terribly impressed with this engine about is it's fine at low speeds. If you want to get a move on, and it kind of feels like you do in this car, it's got a sort of sporty feel to the suspension, then you really have to push this engine pretty hard. And I actually think that I would prefer the diesel. It's got a lot more torque, a little bit less power, but I think that would probably be the one to have. Also, when you consider fuel consumption, on our test route, we averaged 12 litres to the 100 in this car on open roads. That's not very good. And in the diesel, we averaged 7.7 on the launch day. So save a lot of money at the pumps, I think, and get yourself the Ingenium diesel engine. That would be my pick. So one new feature I have to talk about inside this new Range Rover Evoque is the rear view mirror. So look at the rear view mirror, right? Just a mirror, just an ordinary mirror, nothing to see here. But flick this, and it turns into an incredibly crisp digital display. There's a camera on top of the car, just behind the shark fin aerial, giving me an unbelievably wide view of what's happening behind me. It is one of the coolest things I've seen in a modern car. Let's talk about this interior. The new Range Rover Evoque has space for 5 human beings. Rear legroom is decent, and the rear seats fold in a 40-40-20 split, which is very useful. The boot, however, is quite small, and it is over 100 litres smaller than that in the Jaguar E-Pace. Now, it is beautiful in here. Leather everywhere. It feels like a Range Rover. It feels very expensive. So mission accomplished to the designers and the engineers. But if you want this fancy double screen system here, which you can get in the Velar and the Range Rover Sport and all of the big expensive Range Rovers, you need to pay quite a bit more money. But I would say this is worth it. I think this really lifts the cabin. There's nothing quite like this right now on the market. It's very similar actually to the Audi Q8, which is very, very impressive in and of itself. And down here is where you control the car's terrain response. And that leads me nicely into a discussion about this car's 4x4 abilities. See what I did there? So this is a Range Rover. It does have to have the ability to go off-road, and terrain response 2 is really clever. It sets up the car and reacts to whatever surface you're on to make sure you don't get stuck. And the thing is, of all the cars in the segment, all the luxury sort of soft roaders that are out there, this is actually the one I'd feel most confident going off-road in. What I found hugely impressive is that the engineers have managed to make this car feel quite sporty on road, but not at the cost of comfort. So it's not wooden, it handles rough surfaces really, really well. And because it's got permanent all-wheel drive, you don't have to worry about traction, especially out here on super slippery roads today. I feel very confident driving this car. So I've been trying to put myself in the mind of somebody who wants to buy a Range Rover Evoque or is looking at this segment and might be drawn to a Range Rover Evoque. And it's a little confusing for me because for about R1 million, you can get a really good second-hand Range Rover Sport. And I love the Range Rover Sport. It's one of my favorite cars of all time. It just does everything well. But I suppose if you live in the city and you're looking for something that you want to use daily, this car is a lot more compact. It's a lot easier to park, a lot more manageable on city roads. So it's got that going for it. And I love the fact that it looks a lot like a Range Rover Sport. In fact, I think this car looks a little bit better. I think the design is a little bit more successful. The proportions are just a little bit more right. And what this car does for me compared to all the other, say, Germans or the Jags in this segment, is that it gives you this real sense of occasion when you sit inside the car. This interior is really just pretty magnificent. It's got a bit of a special feeling to it, and maybe that's enough to justify the price tag. But maybe none of that matters. Maybe buying a Range Rover enables you to tell people that you've bought a Range Rover. And maybe for a lot of Evoque buyers, that's enough. Cars.co.za has a huge motoring news section full of car reviews. So if you actually are tired of watching me, you can go read those.